Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Powered by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Grit. I am Jason Harwood. With me is Jacob Litton. Today, got a good show. We're going to start our draft coverage. It's about time, right? I mean, we're getting pretty close to draft. A couple weeks. We're hoping to have Eric Schlitt on. We'll get that time and date nailed down for you guys ahead of time so you guys can be on chat. Hopefully you can get some good questions in because Eric's just a wealth of knowledge. So we're really looking forward to that. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the first round of the draft. And so we're looking at offensive tackle and edge, because I think as a majority of Lions fans, that's what we're expecting the Lions to pick. So that's what we're going to focus on today. As the weeks come, we're going to, we'll examine other positions later on in the draft. But today, this is what our focus is going to be on. Also, at the end, we want to touch on the Brad Holmes interview with the Lions Collective. I thought there was some interesting nuggets in there. Also, just congratulations to the Lions Collective for getting Brad Holmes on their program. That's awesome for them. So, Jacob, have you recovered from the Pistons loss last night? You were at the game.
For it being a loss, we came away having like a pretty good night. It was maybe an inch or two away from being one of the best nights ever. Duran shot, follow-up shot, so close to falling. Just the energy in the building. And then Tobias missed when Duran got it. It was just, everybody's heart stopped at the same time. The ball, it felt like it took forever to come down. It like hung for a second. Thought it might go in and, it fell out. And then we're all kind of, everyone's in disbelief for just a minute or two. Really weird. It's the first time I've been to an overtime game that's played out just like that. So we almost were there for a buzzer beater winner. It did not go out that way.
Yeah.
Still a great experience, though.
Awesome. Yeah. So tell everybody why it was a great experience. You got to meet some cool people that I'm jealous of.
Yeah, right. Well, so we were extremely lucky. We bought the club seats. So the club seats, it's all you can eat, all you can drink. If you haven't gotten club seats before, absolutely try to give it a shot because it's a great experience. We get the club seats, so we park in the parking garage that's connected to Little Caesars Arena. And, you can only go through this tunnel if you have like club or suite tickets. So we got there early, just about the time they let people in. And there's an older gentleman and a woman in front of us, walking. And I recognized from the back of his head. I turned and looked at JJ for a second. He has no idea what's going on. And then I'm just like, George. And he turned around. It was George Blaha.
Oh, my God.
So I was in shock. I was like, oh, my God. It's like, hey, can we get a picture with you real quick? And then, in hindsight, I kind of felt bad. It's like, man, I probably just sprung that on him and put pressure on him and take a picture. He was very nice about it. We got a good picture with him. Great way to start the evening by just running in. Perfect timing running into Blaha, though.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I sent the picture to you. You said you got a funny story.
Yeah. So you sent me the picture, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome!" And so I had on my phone. I showed Preston, and Preston looked at it like a 14-year-old would look at something like, "I'm not really interested in this," because what? How cool
what
could
are you
it be?
showing me? What? Yeah.
And then he was like, "Oh my God!" And he's like, he got to meet Glaber Torres and Tarek Skubal. He thought you were Glaber Torres, and he thought JJ was Tarek Skubal. And I looked, the way that JJ was wearing his hat, he looks like Skubal. And we've had the inside joke that you look like Glaber Torres. And I'm like, no. I was like, that's Jacob. I was like, look who they're with. He's like, oh, George Blah. It was just so funny. I laughed out loud. I called you, but I figured you were busy in the stadium.
By the time you called, we were already down in deep.
Yeah,
that is hilarious. It's not at all the story I thought you were going to say when you said you had a funny story. But that's great.
Yeah. So that was my funny story. All right, let's move on from Pistons. Maybe at the end we'll talk a little bit about the Tigers today, because obviously opening day today, and it was a super exciting
good
day.
Opening day, right?
Yeah, great. So before we get into the prospects, I have a couple questions to ask you, Jacob, and I'll chime in with my answers too. So will you we're obviously focusing on tackle and edge today. Are you going to be upset if those are not the first two picks? First and second round, we don't come away with a tackle and an edge.
On the surface, if the question is just if we don't get one tackle, one edge with the first two picks, will I be upset? No.
Okay.
Now there's some other variables in there. Like, does that mean that we got one tackle and then we drafted a quarterback in round 2, or like another wide receiver? There's some things that would cause some, to make me more upset. Obviously, it's inevitable, right, that when the pick comes, there's going to be a handful of players that I really like, that I really hope are going to be there, or that are there, and that I hope that we're going to pick.
Yeah.
Most of the time, Brad Holmes does not pick the players that I have my eye on, but there's a reason that he is doing this for a living and I'm not. So have to trust Brad for the most part. But obviously, those are the two highest positions of need for us, would be the offensive lineman and the edge defender. So logically, you would expect those to be the first two picks, but I can't say I would necessarily be upset. How are you feeling about this, though? You think it's a done deal?
I don't. The edge, I'm not sure on that, because they wanted to get edge last year and it just didn't line up with who they wanted and where they picked. If we don't come away with a tackle in the first two picks, I would be upset. If that's the position that I was like, we need edge help. We really do. But based on getting Wanham, it's like, do they get just a specialty speed rusher later on? And I can understand that. Just from the cost perspective, it would be nice to get a higher rated edge that we could depend on now. However, in the history of the draft, like, if you don't get an edge early, it's a big gamble. It's like getting a quarterback late in second round. Those second round quarterbacks, I know occasionally they worked out, like Jalen Hurts. Well, Lamar Jackson was late first round, right? Like almost into the second round. So like they will, there is this thing that can work. However, it's really, really tough. So I don't know. Tackle to me is the given. It's got to happen. It doesn't have to necessarily happen in round 1, although that's what I hope and I expect. But a lot of other teams know we need a tackle too, and that's going to make it really, really difficult to navigate this.
Especially if we don't go round 1, because then every team game planning around us in round 2, trying to trade in front of us, then we've played our hand. They already know what we're looking for. And if you look at the top 10 edge prospects, the top 10 tackle prospects, the 10th ranked edge is has a round 2 draft grade, round 2, maybe round 3. The 10th grade offense, or 10th ranked offensive tackle, is a round 3, possibly round 4. So there's a considerable drop off with the offensive tackles, whereas you could probably get an edge in round 2.
Yeah, it's whether the edge is going to fit what the Lions want and what the Lions do. So that's the difficult part. All right. So let's just say one of the picks is not a tackle or edge. Where do you think that would position? I'm not going to have you name a player, but name a position that you would think, oh, this is definitely in the cards for the Lions to pick.
I would say linebacker. If it's outside of edge and offensive tackle, which, it could even be offensive guard, maybe somebody that they envision possibly playing tackle or moving somebody else around. But I would think outside of those top 2, it would be linebacker for me.
Linebacker.
What about you, though? Yeah. Do you have another?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go guard. I think that they've kind of lined up like their depth at the guard position. I could see someone in the secondary, cornerback, the Terrion Arnold story got a little more interesting today. So who knows what's going to happen. And then obviously we know the injuries at safety. So you could see something happening there, especially if they know something more about Kirby's injury by that time, or they already know. And you're like, okay, this is going to be Kirby's last hurrah. We might need to get, someone in the back end. So I could see that happening. Even defensive line is an option, right? Like they could go somewhere in the interior too, that that would maybe give them some pass rush, and then Liam has an out after this year too, so they could be looking at that depending on what they think about a Liam's injury with the ACL. Like last year was obviously a little less than expected, but maybe he's going to bounce back this year. We'll see. But yeah, let's break down these prospects, Jacob. So if you're on Spotify or YouTube, we're going to have some graphics on the screen that I put together. So it's not vital that you have that up, but if if you have access to that, it might help you, see the prospect, give you a little additional information that we have. So, all right, Jacob, who are we going to break down first? We're going to go offensive tackle first. So who are we going to go?
All right, offensive tackle, the top ranked offensive tackle in the class this year out of Miami, Francis Mawagoa, which I did not study my pronunciation guide ahead of time. So some of these names I'm going to be taking my best stab at.
Yep. Yeah.
But he, seems to be consensus number one ranked offensive tackle. Pretty much guaranteed to go in the top 10 right now. So any possibility of a Lions getting him would involve trading up, which is very, very slim chance that we trade into the top 10. But Mawagoa, we got first on the list. What are your thoughts on this guy?
I mean, obviously 3-year starter, team captain. He's everything that you want. Early, I saw some mock drafts that he slipped out of the top 10. So like say he gets to 11, which I don't think is going to happen, but say that happens, then he's in the Lions wheelhouse. I mostly put him on our list here just for completeness sake. But I just don't think that, it's going to happen. I mean, the weaknesses they have listing for them are just like stuff that they're pulling out. Like everybody would want this guy as their tackle. I don't see, he's highly graded in pass block, highly graded in run block, an athlete. Like there's nothing to not like about this guy.
Yeah, I hate reading. Obviously, it's their job as analysts that they have to come up with the weaknesses and what they're going to do. But I hate reading the weaknesses. It's like you're just grasping at whatever straws that you have, and like he's the top ranked tackle. Teams that need an offensive tackle are going to be looking at him, probably top 5, right?
Yeah.
I mean, tackle is a coveted position. The thing about him is he is a right tackle, right? So I mean, he primarily played on the right side. That's something, obviously left tackle for the most part is the moneymaker in the position of need for most teams anyway. And not every person is going to be able to just move comfortably from the right to the left side, especially for a rookie.
So let me ask you this, obviously we have Panay, right? He's been playing on the right side. For you, if we had to move Panay, are you okay with that? Say we get someone that Francis here that's right tackle, and we'll go through like where these guys played primarily, just so everyone knows. Does that have any bearing on who we would draft, like whether they played right tackle or left tackle for you?
I think for the team, it probably does not. I think the team is grading all of these guys, figuring out what they've got, can they play, and not necessarily just like with the thought of having to move Panay or whatever. So I think the team is probably just looking at the player, looking at their abilities, not necessarily making that decision before they even get in the building. Me personally, I would much rather keep Panay on the right side, keep that continuity and bring in a rookie, that is comfortable on the left side that could play left tackle. Now, the problem, if you look at the top 10, which we'll go through each one, but I mean, if you look at most of these guys, the majority of these guys have been playing on the right side. And even a couple player or two that have played on the left side have been projected to play right tackle in the NFL just because of their weaknesses or, some of their athletic abilities. So, it doesn't, there may not be, maybe there's a perfect guy. Maybe they've got him circled. They're like, if we get this guy, he'll play right on the left. Anyone else, we might have to have the conversation about moving Panay. In my opinion, I would rather keep Panay on the right side and bring somebody in that can play on the left. Do you feel that way, or do you feel like you want to trust Panay, in the blind side?
I want our 5 best players out there, and if they have to move Panay over, I'm okay with that. Ideally, I agree with you. Like, we know what we have with Panay on the right side. Right? Like, we know that's amazing. We know that's great. We know that's Hall of Fame material, right? Like, why do we want to mess with that? However, when you're putting together a team, you don't always can choose the right pieces, and they're not always available, or you don't want to give up the assets to go get them. You don't want to trade up or whatever you would have to do to get the perfect left tackle. So ideally, yes, I would love to leave Panay where he's at. To me, we draft the best tackle that the Lions have graded when it's their, either they have to trade up a couple to get them, or they, it's whatever falls to them, or they trade back if multiple they're, if they have multiple guys on the board, maybe they trade back too. That would be an option. I I think you deal with everything after that because you have a luxury of having Panay. So it's not like Panay's foreign to the left side. He's played left tackle in college. He's done that. And then we had Taylor here. We weren't going to move Taylor to the right side, and he come in and dominate in the right side. So yeah, ideally, yeah, you leave him where he's at because you know what you have. But otherwise it doesn't really bug me. All right, let's move on to prospect number 2. Um, Spencer Fennell, offensive tackle out of Utah. This is a guy, he played on the right side. He's a right tackle. He also, they project maybe to play inside. Now, for the Lions, I don't think they're looking necessarily for that versatility. They're going to, at this point, they're drafting a tackle to have a tackle. Although, is it nice to have some versatility in case, maybe, he isn't the starting right tackle at the beginning of the season and they need, someone gets injured on the inside and they have to get him in there to play. Yeah, that's nice. But for the most part, we want to draft a tackle to play him at tackle. This is a guy that could fall to the Lions, but for the most part, he's going to I've seen most of him mocked in the 11 to 13, 14 range, even higher. Seen him go to Kansas City at 9. So this is a guy that could potentially fall to the Lions, but it's most likely a guy that we might have to trade up a few picks to get him. Say he does fall to 13 or 14 or 12 or wherever in that range. What do you like about Spencer? Is there anything that you like about him or?
So honestly, like early on when I was going through prospects, I was not crazy about Spencer.
Okay.
But and he was highly rated. He was at the beginning of mocks was, somebody close to the Lions around that. But now lately he's been towards the top 10 going. That's also like his combine score. I think he was like the top offensive tackle at the combine, like 1 or 2. Tested out really well, I guess, and I've heard like interview wise and things like that teams really like him. So he may have locked a top 10 spot up. I don't know. I'm just going off of like the film and stuff that I saw. Wasn't exactly excited about Spencer compared to some of the other people on there. Okay. He did play left tackle a few years ago. He played left tackle in 2023. The last 2 seasons he played at right tackle, but that's also because Utah had a different offensive lineman we're going to talk about in a little bit who was the left tackle. So, this could be a guy that if he falls to us with his athletic ability and everything like that, maybe he is able to slot right into the left tackle spot.
3-year starter, got a high RAS score, which is relative or athletic score 9.8. It's out of 10, so it's very high. The reason why you might hear us mention the RAS score is if you look at the Lions draft picks, one thing that they all have in common, they all have very good raw athletic scores for the most part. So I don't think it's like a requirement for the Lions, or maybe just that's the type of player that they go after. They just happen to fit that category. But if someone has a lower raw athletic score, it'd be less likely the Lions draft him, in my opinion. Spencer is a 3-year starter, so if that's important to you to like have a lot of starts under his belt, kind of know there's a lot of tape on him. The Lions will be able to study that, be able to, be prepared. They're gonna, there's gonna be not very many surprises with Spencer, I would imagine. He is highly rated. PFF has him as the 12th overall rated tackle. He's evenly rated between pass block and run block, which is good, and they're both highly rated. So you're getting a well-rounded tackle right out the chute. So someone that's probably going to be ready to step right in and play day one if you get this guy.
Right.
Which would be nice for the people that do not want Borum to come in, whatever they're worried about him at right tackle. You instantly slot this guy in, and then we've upgraded with Borum. He's our swing tackle, which is obviously upgraded over Skipper. At least in my opinion. So really big upgrade. So, when you want to go heavy sets, then you're ready to go, and you got Pacheco back there ready to run behind this big offensive line. Anything else on Spencer before we move on to the next guy?
Nope. I think that those two, the first two that you said, are the ones that I would say probably less than a 5% chance that either of them are going to be there when we draft. I think they're both off the board early on.
This next guy has been getting mocked to the Lions a lot. It's one of the most mocked players to the Lions that I've seen. And when we talk about mock drafts, a lot of the ones right after the combine are a lot more accurate than the ones that get closer to the draft. The ones that get closer to the draft, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Also, the the drafters have done like 10 mock drafts by then. They got to do something different. So it's like they change things just to change things. So if you look back around mock drafts around right now, they tend to be a little more accurate. So Monroe Freeling, Georgia, he is a left tackle. Talk about athletic. I mean, this guy, 9.99 out of 10 raw athletic score. I mean, this guy can move. He had a really good 40-yard time, even splits. And when you look at a 40-yard time, is that really applicable for offensive tackle? Not at the 40-yard line, but he had really good splits. Like at the 10-yard split was 1.71, which when you're out pulling, that's very useful to have. And obviously the Lions like to move their tackles around, and like to move their offensive linemen around. So that's good to have. So I uh wouldn't break my heart if he's our pick, although my worry with him is that he doesn't have a lot of starts under his belt, only 17 total starts going into the draft. So what do you think about Freeling?
17 starts, but that was also at Georgia, and he's playing some pretty high end competition from
Hmm.
Georgia. He played on the same line as Tate Ratledge, so they've got that going for him as well. A little bit of familiarity between them. This, I've seen him mock to the Lions a lot too. I would be okay with this pick. Uh,
Hmm.
Big dude, quick. They said he's really good in the screen game, really good getting out. Uh, Although, if you notice on here, where his ranks are, his pass block 85.6 passing, 61.3 in running. So his run
Yep.
grade was marked low. That's also on Pro Football Focus. So, we'll not really take too much of that to heart. But I would be okay with this pick. And I think that this is the first on our list that would be a realistic option for us if we stay put and draft where we're at.
At 17. Yeah. So the weaknesses they have is like he tends to lean and lunge. That can be coached out. Like that's not something that like, oh well, that's not correctable. It's not like it, it's not like he has some sort of size imperfection. He's 6'7", 315 pounds. The guy's huge. Runs, like I said, runs really well. He's super athletic. Went to Georgia, which you said is, when you look at the Lions draft history, especially in the first, second round, we're hitting big schools. Like we're hitting Iowa, we're hitting, for tight end and linebacker. Those we're hitting, Alabama for your secondary. Last year was a lot of Georgia players. So, those all check boxes for the Lions. They like these big schools. It's easier to compare them because they're playing against really good competition. Now it is the SEC, so it's not like it's the Big Ten, but we'll give them a pass, right?
Yeah, right. With this, keep in mind too, let's say we draft this person, is Borum gonna start over our rookie? Like, is this gonna be like a learning year? Is this gonna be, not as much pressure to get out there and be on the left side right away?
Yeah, the interesting thing with okay, so let's think about this. Now we're gonna draft. Like if you're drafting Freeling, he's been playing left tackle. So what if you started Borum, he's right tackle. Like they're not gonna move him to the I don't think they're gonna move him to the left side because based on Brad Holmes' interview, like they looked at like all his positions, they were happy with the right tackle. I don't think they're gonna be willing to do that. I think they move Panay over. So if Monroe Freeling is more comfortable on the left side. Like they deem like he's our left tackle. I don't like the idea of okay, we're gonna put Borum on the right side, Panay on the left, and then all of a sudden when Monroe's ready, we're gonna switch Panay over. Like that's a lot. And it's not necessarily for Panay. It's I'm thinking of Tate Ratledge, young guy, second year guy. All of a sudden he's gonna have a totally different body over there. I'd rather take if they feel like Monroe's ready and maybe he's even with Borum and they're like, you know what, let's just have Monroe take his lumps and we'll just keep Panay over there because after a few games and Monroe gets his feet wet, we'd be all right. That's at least my thought. Um, And also, I know you're a guy that likes continuity on the line and doesn't like to switch things up. So I would imagine you probably feel that way too, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I want the same 5 guys to be the starters. Obviously, I don't want anyone to be injured or anything like that, but I want the same 5 in training camp to be our starting 5 throughout the year. I want to pick the
Yeah.
right people right away, stay healthy, and keep that same thing going, keep the ball rolling. And,
Mhm.
anytime you draft somebody, an offensive lineman in the first round like that, you don't always know that they're going to come in and mesh, and, there's going to be some growing pains involved.
Yep. I have a feeling though, you're drafting at 17. I mean, the Lions are expecting a starter. You're expecting a starter out the gate on the offensive line. I at least that's what I'm expecting. But with the previous two, they have 3 years of starting experience. I expect them to come in. Monroe, like I said, 17 starts. Maybe they don't feel he's ready. Maybe they think he needs a little bit more seasoning. The next guy on our list, however, I think is probably I I like this guy. This is my guy. So Blake Miller, offensive tackle out of Clemson. He is projected. He played right tackle. So I don't know if he has left tackle like experience. I guess I don't know the answer to that. But mostly that's where he played at Clemson was right tackle. Hugely athletic guy, 9.90. So very athletic. 54 starts in college. So you're talking about a guy with a ton of experience. Clemson, not playing their best football, but still a big time school, good coaching. I'm okay with it. So this is probably my guy, and I think he would be there at 17 for the Lions to pick. What do you think about Blake Miller?
Yeah, he's got right now around 1 to 2 grade. So depending on, obviously he tested really well at the combine, depending on interviewing, different things like that. It's still up in the air if he's going to be around 1 or 2. I think that
Yeah.
that is definitely somebody that's going to be there. He's going to be on the board for the Lions,
Hmm.
or he's going to be up for grabs if we want him to be our pick at 17. Uh,
Yep.
I think I feel about the same for Monroe that I do for Blake Miller, which is I would be okay with that being the pick there. I can't say I would be too, I don't want to say excited about either of them. But it's a position of need and it's a player that could slot in right away. That
Hmm.
also means you're pretty sure with Blake Miller that if he comes in, he's more comfortable on the right side, then you're pretty sure that Panay would be moving to the left.
Left side. Yep. Yep. And I'm willing to I'm willing to I'm okay with that. So it's highly rated pass block. Is This pass blocking is better as run blocking, but still per PFF he's still in the top 60 of run block. So I'm okay with it. His weaknesses are the same as everybody else, like lunges, footwork needs improvement. I mean, you're gonna find that for any of these prospects. I mean, they they're gonna need some coaching. We got Hank Fraley. I'm okay with that. So uh the next guy is I think the next guy out of Alabama is gets mocked to the Lions almost as much as Freeling. Especially early on, he was really getting mocked a lot. So who's our next guy there, Jacob?
All right, next one on the list, Caden Proctor out of Alabama. Uh, Big guy. You have listed on here per Eric that he is a left tackle. He played left tackle at Alabama, but he could play
Hmm.
right tackle. Also, could possibly play guard. So
Yep.
you, I guess that means that most teams are not sure about where they're going to put him, or that also just
Yeah.
shows that he can be flexible and they show different possible strengths everywhere.
Right.
This we know how Jason loves big, strong men, and he this is one of them right here.
Yes.
I think this would be the one that would be, I don't know if it's just the Alabama thing or just the strength. Something about him I think is a little more exciting to have him on the team rather than Monroe
Okay.
Freeling or Blake Miller. Maybe that's also
Yeah.
just me knowing that he, has played on the left side also. you know, um, I think that like I said, I don't know how else to put it. I would feel better, be more excited about having him on the team
Hmm.
than the other two at this point in time. We'll see how the interviews and other things come out and as more information comes out. But just for first look, first glance, that the size and everything that he's got to him, the power,
Yeah.
I like Proctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Powers his game. Squats 815. 815. Like
That's almost
that's
what I
insane.
squat.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I want to see the bar, my friend. I want to see what the bar looks like when you get that up. That would be
You need a special
that'd be
bar
amazing.
actually, and there's only at my gym, and they don't allow cameras there. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. All right. It's probably they have the no camera rule because of you. The women probably like that guy, the guy you can't get rid of the camera. So quit trying to
okay,
uh yeah,
they don't even
gotcha.
let you in the gym. I don't want to hear it.
I don't need to go to the gym. I'm 46. I play pickleball, man. That's what I do.
What's your
46. Well, I'm
RAS score?
46 tomorrow. Tomorrow's my birthday, so I
Yes.
turned
Happy early birthday, Jason.
46 tomorrow. Today's my last day of 45. Getting closer to 50. Ugh. So Caden, when you talk about power, yes, obviously he squats a lot. He is a brick wall. Power rushers are going to have trouble getting through him. He does need to is he increases ability with speed rushers. So movement is a little bit of an issue. So I haven't watched tape on any of these guys, to be honest with you. So I'm a tend to be a guy like, okay, who the Lions draft? Now I'm going to look and I'm going to really study these guys as opposed to I don't have a ton of free time to study, 500 prospects tape. And
Right.
college tape is mostly for me. I don't have access to like all 22 film with college stuff. So you're mostly looking at, you know, YouTube videos. But regardless, that'd be the only concern with Cade Proctor is that, okay, his movement, he does have a good route athletic score, 9.17. So it is lower than the last two, Blake and Monroe Freeling, but still, still respectable. So the last guy that we're going to talk about is Jacob kind of mentioned him a little bit earlier. He didn't mention his name, but Caleb Lomu. So he is the teammate of Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle out of Utah. He plays on the left side. This one is one that's been going a little bit later in the draft. So this could be a if the Lions like Caleb, it might be an opportunity to trade back a little bit and still get your tag. Excuse me. Raw athletic score 9.78, so obviously very athletic. What do you think about Caleb, Jacob? I don't know how much you know about him. If you have any thoughts or anything.
Early on, a lot of from what I saw were like top 15 picks. Now some of that's kind of a little bit more all over the place after the combine, but I still see a lot round one from him. And he, like I mentioned earlier, because Spencer Feno he played one season at left tackle and then played the last 2 seasons at right tackle. But that was because this guy Caleb Lomu was the left tackle at Utah, and I mean he did extremely well and was consistent at left tackle. So and it's interesting because from what I know, they said that Lomo was pretty good in the run game and was decisive in the run game. And then according to the numbers that we have on here, Pro Football Focus has him rated a score of 62, which is 232nd out of their offensive tackles. So
he offsets that with a very good pass blocking rate of 82.1. So that is interesting. I don't know what I think about that PFF number. I mean, PFF grades in college seem to be crazy because there's so much like who they playing, what are their competition, what is the scheme. Like there's so much. So I don't, the reason I put them on here is that, just they made a number for every guy. Let's compare it and it'll give us a roundabout type of guy. If he truly is, struggles in the run game this much, this is not a Lions pick, but maybe the tape says something else to the Lions and then they could go with him. I am intrigued with the idea, like say Blake Miller and Caleb Lomu are available. The Lions like both. Would you trade back a few picks, 3 or 4 picks to get another third rounder? To get another top 100 pick? I personally like that idea if the Lions are comfortable with their guy. They're comfortable with either one of these guys. I think the Lions have to start thinking about that type of decision too. When we talk about the Brad Holmes interview, he said something that really gives me caution that that's just not going to be possible. He's not going to be able to trade back unless, it's for sure that he's going to be able to get one of, his guys. That being said, Jacob, out of all these guys is, Caden Proctor, who's if you had to bet, who would be in a Lions uniform? Like if you're putting your stake in your claim, who's going to be a Lion if they draft a tackle in the first round? out of the guys that we just talked about.
So not who I want. If I had to just guess is who's going to be in a Lions
Who's going to wear the
uniform,
Honolulu blue out of these guys?
I'm going to say Monroe Freeling.
Mm-hmm.
Francis and Spencer, I don't think are going to be there. I think Monroe is the one that's mocked closely. I think that Lomu Proctor might be falling down some draft boards. Don't know about Blake Miller. There's also another tackle, Max Hanachor out of Arizona State. That's an interesting tackle prospect, former basketball player, but that's also somebody that right now is most likely mocked in round 2.
Okay.
Maybe that's somebody, at our spot. We still have Blake Miller, Max, some of these people on there that we're looking at that we think we can get in round 2 and we go a different position. If I'm betting on the players that we've said and what I know right now, I would say Monroe Freeling. What about you?
I like that. I think you're probably right. I think the best bet out of all these guys is Monroe Freeling. Now, one thing I could see, is the limited number of starts. If the Lions want more of a for sure thing out of that pick in this round 17, and what they think about the offensive line, do they want to take a little bit of a gamble? I don't know. I could see them going with someone like Blake Miller. Um, I don't think Kane Proctor, if he really struggles with movement like that, that's just not what our offensive linemen do. Now, maybe it's a coaching thing, and maybe they, whatever, they talk to the coaches and they think they can, coach that into him. But if he does struggle with movement, I just, I, I just don't see that working for the Lions run game. But,
I think the concern there is it a weight issue?
Okay.
He's whatever, like 360 pounds or something like that. And his, his 40 time was slow compared to the other guys, which was why his RAS score was lower than the other ones, is because of that 40 time, I'm sure.
Yep.
Which I don't know when Alabama's pro day is. Did that already happen?
Yes, Alabama's pro day, I think, already happened because Ty Simpson was
it was yesterday.
out there.
Pro day was yesterday.
Yeah. Yep. And so, I knew that was yesterday. So I don't know. These numbers I probably are not from that pro day if he went, because I think I got this right before that. All right, Jacob, let's move on to the next position that I know a lot of Lions fans are interested in. And I'm sure Lions fans are disappointed with how the Lions have addressed this position thus far. Really since Aiden Hutchinson, they've been really disappointed with how we viewed the outside edge. So, first guy we'll talk about is David Bailey, defensive end out of Texas Tech. This is going to be outside of the Lions' range. He's just listed on here just in case Brad Holmes really wants to shoot for the fences and move all the way up. I don't think that's going to happen. Guy's hugely athletic. Top 5 rank overall defensive end in college football per PFF. Definitely a pass rush specialist over a run defender, but he doesn't have a bad run defender grade. Anything that you want to talk about with David Bailey?
I think that would be awesome to get. I think there's, I'll say, less than 2% chance that he's there when we pick.
My God, I could, if the Lions got him though, can you imagine what social media would be like? Oh my God, it would be.
I mean, his jersey would be selling very well before he even took a snap.
Exactly.
The hype would be very, very high if we got somebody like that.
The opposing quarterbacks in the division would be very, very anxious for game day with having Aiden and this guy on the other side. So, let's skip to the next guy. The next guy I think is a realistic option for the Lions. TJ Parker, out of Clemson. Guy's 6'4", 263. Got a 9.36 RAS score. He's not as highly rated as pass rush and run defense. What do you think about TJ Parker? Do you have any thoughts about him fitting in a Lions uniform?
When I was looking at edge defenders, and honestly, I guess I would say still, even right now, when I'm looking at edge defenders, when I'm reading mocks, when I'm reading information, TJ Parker fits what the Lions are about more than most of those other guys. He sets the edge. He does that wall. He, stuffs the run. He's able to create some sort of a pass rush also. I think that he makes the most sense out of anybody else on the list. The question I think that would come up would be, do we reach for him? Like, do other teams feel the same way? Do we trade back? Is this going to be a Tyreek thing where, there's a couple edges that have already gone? Maybe there's a different edge that goes in front, and then we feel pressure like, okay, we do need to take an edge right now. And then we take him at 17 when other teams maybe have late first, or second round grade on him. I think that he makes the most sense for what the Lions are about. Is he going to come in right away and get, 10, 15 sacks? Probably not. He got 11 sacks last year. He also forced a bunch of fumbles. He had a really good year, and that's somebody I'd be really excited to have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to talk about athletic freak and like some of the other like high ceiling of some of the other players, I think maybe that's where he's missing the mark.
Mm-hmm. But you're right. Like the Lions view that other side as someone they need to set that edge. That's why they got DJ Wanham. The guy could set the edge. He's not gonna light the world on fire with pass rush skills, but he just does a lot of things really well on the other side, and he'll take a lot of snaps. When you get DJ Parker, are you going to get a ton of sacks? Maybe because you got Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. That's going to help everybody's sack total. But the Lions view, like you said, he's a good fit for the Lions. What they want to do, he could set the edge because that's number one. What they want from all their edge players, and it'd be also nice to have a nice cheap option at edge for have that locked up for 4 years, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? For 5 years almost. You probably, if he does what you want him to do, you have him for 5 years if he's the right guy.
Right.
And then you got the guy next to Aiden because for 5 years you got both ends locked up. That's dynamite. All right, next guy is Keldrick Falk. He's out of Auburn. Thing that the thing when I look through the strengths, like someone like Jacob said, you could look through the strengths and they tend to all read the same after a while. But one thing that stuck out with me is that this guy's a culture player, which obviously would fit right in with what the Lions like. I mean, the Lions really like, these guys that just come in and are football players. They will culture guys, really good teammate, will do anything for their teammate, work extra hard. That's right up the Lions grit, talking grit, right? Like this is exactly what the Lions want. He's young. He's only 20, but the strengths say he plays much older. So do you have anything that you thought about Keldrick Falk?
What's interesting about Keldrick Falk is that he is like the same size, like same height, I think same weight as Marcus Davenport, but just moves so much better than Marcus Davenport does. So that was the interesting thing to me. And, I think that this is another player that chances are he's going to be there. Do we pull the trigger on him or not? If you remember last year, there were so many players that were there when we were drafting. There was like 5 or 6 that were like, oh my God, all these guys are there. Who are we going to get? Is it going to be one of them? And then when we drafted Tyreek, it was like, man, that was not really on our radar. I mean, he was on the list, but not somebody that we expected that name to be called at all. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like we're gearing up for another situation like that, where there's probably going to be, maybe there's 3 edge, 3 offensive linemen. We're like, which one of those 6 are going to go? And then we do end up drafting another defensive tackle or something,
Yeah.
I think he's going to be there, and I'd be okay with this pick as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to be there. I think that, you just mentioned like TJ Parker and Keldrick Falk fit what the Lions want. They from that edge. They want a really good run defender. Both of these guys can run defend. TJ Parker is probably better at rushing the quarterback than Keldrick Falk. So, if that's your tiebreaker, you go that way. Again, big school, Auburn, SEC school, that's most of these guys are all big schools, and that's who, typically that's who's going in the first round, unless you're, some sort of athletic freak. The next guy is Cassius Howell out of Texas A&M. I don't know too much about this guy. This is the lowest raw athletic score on our board here, 8.19, which automatically tells me that I just don't think that he's going to be on the Lions' radar right now. But do you have any thoughts on Cassius Howell?
Yeah, I don't know where you saw. Did you see a mock to the Lions or what? Most of what I saw has him with a round 2 grade, possibly round 3.
Yeah, I saw him getting. It might have been a trade, but yes, he was in. He was in one. Like it was like 1 or 2 writers mocked him to the Lions. at some point, but it
Okay.
wasn't a major publication. But I just put him on here mostly for completeness sake. I don't see this as a Lions pick at all.
No, because where you have the difference with Howell is that he can't set the edge, but he's got flashier pass rush moves, which can be nice, but we don't need another, we don't need somebody opposite of Aiden Hutchinson that can only rush the passer and that is going to get blown out, on these running plays. And inability to set the edge, you let a scrambling quarterback, get around you, or you get the running back get to the outside. We can't afford for that to happen. So I think they would really, really have to like him as a person and like what he's about in interviews and stuff like that to take a shot on Cassius. But I definitely don't think that would be in the first round.
Yeah, this is the type of guy you want later, but he's not going to be there available later, most likely. I mean, unless you could maybe second round, maybe we trade up from 50 or something like that if we do like him. But I just feel like, especially for what the Lions like on the edge, I think of AQM, it's like we liked him, right? And he got the double digit sacks. We liked him, but the Lions, you know, 20 snaps a game. I mean, that's what he was getting, 19, 20 snaps a game. And, are you going to spend high draft capital for a guy that's going to get 19 or 20 snaps a game? It's not a good, bang for your buck. So I just don't see that being an option. We're all spoiled with Aiden Hutchinson because Aiden Hutchinson is a guy that's out there for like 90% of snaps and plays at a super high level for those 90% of snaps. That guy's a freak of nature. Most edges are getting rotated in and out, and they're not, they're just not available like that. One last edge before we move on, Jacob, is Akeem Mesidor, defensive end out of Miami. This guy's highly rated as far as PFF. I mean, he's the number 3 overall defensive end, highly rated in both pass and rush defense. You have any thoughts on Mesidor?
I really like Mesidor, and I think that this is just a classic case of people, you take his height, you take his weight, you take his age, and all of a sudden you've immediately dropped him towards like the bottom of the first, second round. Let me see actually what I have him on here. Yeah, late round 1 or round 2. But if you just look at what he's done out there on the football field, he's a round 1 pick, and he makes an impact right away. The guy can play football, but any team that drafts him, it just has to be, he'll be a 25-year-old rookie. He's coming off of, he's got an injury history. We certainly, that's a trigger word for us. We don't like injury history when it comes to our players, but if you're just talking about what he puts on the field, that would be a great pick.
Yeah. It's the age thing. It's crazy. He's going to be 25 years old. When he's a rookie, he's going to be 25 years old. So I think he's currently 24, but by the time season rolls around, he's going to be 25.
You pick up his 5th-year option, he's 30 years old.
30 years old, I know. Exactly. But you know what? Honestly, if he comes in and does his job, are you really worried about that? If you get 5 great years out of defensive end, you're probably okay with that. I mean, honestly, for us, especially with having Aiden on the other side, like we're happy. This guy is a good culture fit, and listed in his strengths. Can use finesse and power. He has good counter moves. Like he's very eager in the run game. This seems like a Lions pick, and I think the Lions would look past the age type thing on this. I mean, ideally, you're right. If he has all these qualities and he's 22, he's going in the top 10, in my opinion. Right? I mean, he's getting knocked down because of where he's at. I mean, he's at a premium position. He's very highly graded. Comes out of a big school, Miami. He's got a lot of things going for him. But yet he's going to be at the end of the first round. So he's a guy that, let's say, okay, you trade back, you're getting him, and then you're also getting a 3rd round pick too. So you're either getting a 3rd round pick, maybe not starting right away, but you're hoping that guy's starting by, certainly the following season, but maybe even by the end of the season, and you're getting another starter out of that, another cheap starter for 4 years.
Right.
So you have to weigh those pros and cons with that. But yeah, I am interested in Akeem. We'll see how it goes, but this could be somewhere where like, okay, all our tackles that we were interested, they're off the board, and you're still picking at 17. You drop back to 25. You pick up, even at 25, you might, like 17 to 25, you might pick up a second round pick in that, or next year's first round. I could see that happening. And if you get that, you got to, you know, you got to think that that's a possibility. And you're getting a premium position if you like this guy.
I mean, if you're Brad Holmes, I don't know why that wouldn't be like towards the top of what you're trying to do here. Unless you just absolutely love somebody that's, maybe you love Keldrick Falk and you're thinking, oh my God, we've got a top 5 grade on this guy. If he falls to us, like it's a done deal. Outside of something like that happening, though, would you not want to almost just roll the dice? Like, okay, well, we like Falk, we like Messidor. Hopefully one of them is going to be there if we drop back these 6 picks, especially like you said, if you get a round 1 pick next year because of that drop, I think that you got to roll the dice there that one of them is going to be there. And if neither of them are there and you take the next guy on your list, you try to trade out of the first round again. Stockpile some picks if you have to. You got to gamble somewhere there. It just seems like most of the gambles that we see from Brad Holmes are gambling our mid-round picks away to move higher up in round 3, for project players, instead of gambling on, dropping down in these rounds and just hoping that who we want is going to be there. But it worked with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? I mean,
yes. Well, Brad has I think he has a very good sense on who's going to be there, like what other teams are trying to do. Like, not saying he's perfect, and I know that I have my own issues with the way he drafts. However, one of his talents, I believe, is that having a very good sense of like, this is how it's going to fall, this is how it's going to go. But if you're, we'll talk about the interview a little bit later. He talked about all these constraints, right? He talked about like salary constraints because we want to resign these guys. A way to restock the shelves is to stockpile high draft picks where you get cheaper rookies on 4-year deals. You've locked up a position. If you draft right, you've locked up a position. You've locked up a position for 4 years. And I trust Brad Holmes to draft well. I do. I know that people are on the fence of him lately, but we're in the position we are because he did draft well, and we've been in this town where getting a top 10 pick was not a given that we were going to get, a starter. It just we're taking it for granted. I think some people are taking that for granted.
There's a question in the chat.
I was going to say, go ahead and hit that up, and I'll put it on there. Which one are you going to go first? With the top one?
Yes. Detroit Fan Man 9899.
Yep.
So it said, still wondering what we're going to do to replace Reeder and Lopez. Don't we need to draft a guy who can eat up snaps? What about Peter Woods, defensive tackle from Clemson at 17? So have you heard of Peter Woods? What are your thoughts on, we kind of mentioned earlier, that same thing, like, there's going to be several tackles, there's going to be several edges. What if we go defensive tackle again?
Yep. I would not be surprised if we go defensive tackle. I would not be surprised. Would I be ecstatic about it? No, I would not be. However, I don't know. I'll be 100% honest. All my draft focus has been on these positions that I did today. So I don't know anything outside of that. So if you got insight, I'd love to hear it. The only thing that I would love if we do go into defensive tackle is to have some sort of pass rush ability, because that's what we need. We need someone that can get upfield in the middle of our defense. Obviously, Aleem, we would love Aleem to be that guy. And if he's not that guy this year, then I don't know if he's going to be on this team after that, because that's why he got the contract he did. So do you have any thoughts on Peter Woods?
Well, yeah, Peter Woods specifically, would be somebody that got that fast, that quick first step, explosive, like Aleem used to have, and would slot in nicely there. And I think he can attack the quarterback more than Tyleek could. Where Tyleek, you would kind of count on the double teams of trying to stuff the run, stuff that. I think Peter Woods would be somebody that possibly could do that, but also could threaten to get after the quarterback. And absolutely would be somebody that I would not be surprised if that's who they took and is on the table there at 17.
Okay.
Also would not say ecstatic. It would be, there's very few players that if we drafted right there where we're at and where the team stands, there's very few players I think that I would be absolutely just over the moon ecstatic about.
Mm-hmm.
I want the depth, and I want somebody that makes sense and helps the team out.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always make it a sexy pick.
If you're drafting a tackle, for the most part, you're not going to be going crazy unless we get, Mayuga out of, Miami somehow,
Honestly,
then you're
though,
ecstatic.
think about
Yeah.
that scenario. Think about if he's dropping down on these boards, then we trade up, like we trade some future picks to get him.
Yeah.
Is that going to be like, oh my God, we just won the draft?
Yeah.
Or then the angle you're looking at is, why did these other teams pass on it? Then we just
Yeah.
traded away some further draft capital, get this guy that
Yeah.
nobody else seemed to want.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a good, I guess,
Well,
trade up scenario for me.
maybe
Not right from the jump, not on draft night. 2 years down the road is when you look really good or really bad if you're Brad Holmes.
Yeah. What if, on the draft morning, someone drops a video of him with a bong mask, and that's why he's dropped.
That's possible. Hey, now anymore though, you can just blame that on AI. Tunzel could have said that wasn't me, that was AI.
And that was AI.
No one has enough time to investigate before the draft. You're good.
Yeah, that's hilarious. All right. So Detroit Fan Man 9899 also says, I'm alone, but I have a hard time, hard no on 25-year-old who wasn't dominant until he was 3 years older than his opponent. He won't have the same advantage in the league. And that's a fair point. But if he's grown into being dominant, that doesn't mean that he can't continue his development and doesn't mean he's at his ceiling. Any thoughts on that, Jacob?
I would have to look to see exactly what his what his grades out were. But I thought that he was rated pretty high the last few years. But I did see, or there's also the angle too that he's been playing with Ruben Bain and teams are game planning around him, and maybe that's why his numbers look better. I don't think that's the case based on what you see the tape. Like, high motor players like that doesn't necessarily matter who's on the other side. But like Detroit Fan Man says, that's a fair point, and I'm sure that's the same. Half the league probably feels the same way, and that's probably why this guy does not go round one.
Yep. All right, let's couple signings since we've last talked. Lions signed edge Peyton Turner and offensive lineman Ben Barch. Do you have any thoughts on either one of those guys?
Glad to see the signing. Glad that they're in positions of need. Other than that, nothing too not excited or ecstatic about either one of these guys. If you're telling me that Ben Barch is going to be starting games, I mean, something probably went wrong with our game planning somewhere. But could be a solid depth piece and, like I said, position of need. And Peyton Turner is somebody that's very low risk. I mean, I don't want to say high reward, but I mean, if he's got something left in the tank, he was a former high draft pick, why not kick the tires on this guy?
Yep. No guaranteed money for Peyton Turner. I don't think the contracts come out on Barch, but I'm going to assume that's a vet minimum contract. So probably very, very low risk. Just trying to get depth in there. I'm okay with Peyton Turner, right? He is your speed rusher guy. And if he shows something and we can get 15 snaps out of him a game, on third down, I'm okay with it and let him do his thing. And then, he signed somewhere else and they could deal with the injury stuff if the injury bug, just avoids him this year, which seems odd with an injury guy coming to the Lions. That doesn't seem likely. But DJ Reader came here. Even Carlton Davis, I know he broke his leg at the end of the season, it was his leg. I think, Carlton Davis.
Dorsey broke his leg. Carlton Davis broke his face or something, didn't he?
Oh yeah, was it his jaw? Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. So we'll see. I don't get all up in arms on people are like, oh, that's a Brad Holmes side guy, injury guy. He's costing us nothing other than a roster spot, and why not give a guy like that chance? First round edge players are going to get more chances than anybody else, and it's just all we need is for him to have one good season, and that's all we need him. He signed here, and then he'll sign somewhere else, and we don't have to worry about the injury risk after that. All right, Jacob. We're about an hour in, so let's talk a little bit about the Brad Holmes interview on Lions Collective. I am holding my breath that we get, Shep or we get someone else, right? Because they just seem to handing these interviews out to podcasts. POD got Petsing, Holmes went to Lions Collective. I don't know who we're going to get. We'll see when Lions PR reaches out to us.
We're still waiting, guys.
Yeah, we're still waiting. Don't hold your breath, right? All right. So I'll start with the first thing. He said the Lions, Brad Holmes, that is, said the Lions spent to their budget. They but they do have more room. They could restructure and things like that. Were you satisfied with his answer to that? Like they spent to their budget, even though we know that they have more room, with restructures, or are you buying it, or are you one of these people that are really upset that they just didn't spend it all this year?
No, actually, I think I'm buying it. I don't think most of this interview, most of what I saw were classic answers. I don't think there was really anything that like blew me out of the water that I had to pump the brakes and be like, what did he just say?
Hmm.
He used the word constraints a lot to the point
Yes.
where he even had to like, define what he meant by that when he realized that he just said it so many times. But
Yep.
I mean, I feel like that was truthful. And he,
Yep.
I think that was a point that he wanted to make in that interview to them and to the fans is that, you know, it's not like we have, obviously it's more, but it's not like they had $100 million to spend and they're choosing just to spend 5 million just to be like, okay, cool, we didn't have to
Hmm.
spend that much. He said they're spending everything that they have available to us.
Yep.
That's all done
Yeah.
with the idea that they have all of these players to re-sign. That's what he
Hmm.
mentioned in there, and I feel like that's truthful because they're worried about Jack Campbell, they're worried about Jameer Gibbs, they have Branch, they have Laporta. We've got all these contracts that are coming up, and that's on their mind, and that's why they've had to limit their spending. It's a budget,
Mm.
that's how they're doing it, and I feel like that part was truthful. What about
Yep.
you though? Was that not good enough for you? Do you think the
No.
restructure should have been different or
Nope. I'm okay with them doing the way I look at it, Jacob, is if I told you, hey, the Lions are going to sign an all pro linebacker that's young, good leader, on the rise, healthy, hasn't missed a game. Would you be ecstatic about that? Because I'm describing Jack Campbell, right? Leading tackler on the team. You'd be really excited if he wasn't on the Lions and we signed him. I don't understand why there isn't the same excitement with us maintaining a guy like that, keeping a guy like that. I just don't get it. Like people want a brand new shiny object instead of looking at and be like, we already have, we have this all pro player here. Lions had they're right up there with the most all pro players, up there with, Pro Bowl players. We have a good roster. We, just need to retool the depth part of it. And, if injuries line up, this is a very good team. So I just won't get that kind of reasoning. To me, it's a grass is greener on the other side argument. Like I want the shiny new object instead of what I already have at home. It's like my kids have all these toys at home, when they were younger, but they always wanted something new at the store, right? Well, we got something better at home. I I feel like that's the crux of the argument with the Brad Holmes and them saying he doesn't spend any money. No, he's just being smart. He's not overspending his budget.
and those same people would be furious if we just blew all of our money right now, and then in turn we didn't have
Yeah,
enough money to retain Gibbs
right.
and Jack Campbell.
Right. Yeah. He'd be like, you drafted these really good all pros and you're just letting them out of town. Yeah, exactly. How would you feel if Jack Campbell was on the Packers and you had to deal with him? You'd
No,
be pissed,
man.
right? All right. The thing I did think was interesting, he talked about Al Quddin Muhammad. He did say that they weren't going to be able to afford him. They felt that they weren't going to be able to afford him. But really, I mean, they signed Wanham. I mean, Wanham's deal is cheaper, but it's very similar to AQM. So, how did you read that answer, or how do you react to him saying that they weren't going to be able to afford AQM, but then they signed DJ Wanham for essentially similar money?
He said that about a few players, I think, like Meek and Alex. Just what he said, I think, is that they were just upfront with these players, like, "Hey, we like you, we like what you're about. We just don't think we're going to be able to afford, what you're going to be, what you're going to be getting elsewhere." When they talk to these
Hmm.
agents and stuff like that. This one was interesting because we know the numbers look very similar, and I don't remember who asked the question, but then Brad was like, "Well, I think the contracts are shaped differently." Specifically talking about AQM and Wanham. And I have not
Yeah.
looked to see exactly how much different they're shaped. I don't know if he's talking about bonuses or what he's talking about, but it just seemed like what I thought is what I said before is that maybe AQM wanted more money and was asking for like a higher contract or was looking for something else from us that we weren't offering. And then free agency hits, he's looking around and finds out that this is all he's being offered. This is all that's on the table, and he has to take the deal
Hmm.
elsewhere. And by that point, then we've already, we're moving on, and now we know how much we can afford, and then we sign Wanham.
Yep. I think what Brad Holmes didn't say out loud was that they expect Wanham to play double the amount of snaps of AQM. So when you look at
Yeah.
the value per snap, you're paying half as much for Wanham as you are for AQM. Now, that's how the Lions play. Like for another team, Muhammad may have played more snaps, right? They may not value, they may have not valued run defense as much as the Lions do at that edge position. So I mean, that's really where that comes down to. So I'm okay with it. I wasn't. That was just the interesting thought. Was like we can't afford Wanham or can't afford AQM, but they say Wanham for. I mean, I know the deals are structurally different, but they're very similar cost, total cost. They did ask him about Taylor Decker, and I thought that was really good that they brought that up. And I was interested to hear Brad Holmes' answer on that, but it really wasn't clear. So I'm just going to ask you straight up, like now that we've caught it through free agency, Taylor Decker hasn't signed. Did the Lions fail Taylor Decker with a lack of communication, or was this all Taylor Decker's fault? Did he misread the market? Did he, you know, think he deserved more than what everybody else values him at?
That's a tough question. And I mean, I thought it was, I don't know if it was, I think it was Justin that asked, because he brought up, he's like, not saying that, what you said at, the meetings or whatever had anything to do with it, but it was right after Brad Holmes met with everyone. They talked about Decker's future. Then all of a sudden, Decker says, I'm back. And
Yeah.
that's when they really need to have those conversations with his agent and everything. Like, okay, great to have Taylor back, but we really need him to take a pay cut. And Decker didn't want to take a pay cut. They had go back and forth for a little while. I don't know that it's necessarily a communication issue. I think it's just like anything else, right? The constraints. It was the constraints,
Yeah.
Jason. But
Yeah.
they had a number in mind. Decker felt that he was worth more than that number and that he needed more than that, and we decided we, weren't going to honor it. They both agreed to go their separate ways. I think that's what we all thought happened beforehand, and I don't think that he let loose anything else in this interview to lead you to believe otherwise. Did you think that he let something slip? Do you think that maybe had they been more open ahead of time that we could have, still had Decker on this team?
Yeah, I don't see the thing is like we don't know the whole timeline. I reading like how Justin answered that question, how Brad, I think Taylor Decker did surprise him with that post, and they did not expect that answer there. My feeling was the Lions are like, let's get through the combine because this all happened at the combine, right? So their focus at that point is combine. They're going to tackle they're going to move into their free agency stuff. Not that they weren't looking at free agency before that, but I think they didn't expect Taylor to have an answer that quickly or post it openly like that. And I don't think they had reached out to Taylor since January. And at that point, maybe from that talk they thought Taylor was going to retire. So there's no urgency about us, getting here and saying, "Hey, if you're going to come back, we're going to ask you for a pay cut." Obviously, I don't like the idea of us having a pillar of our team and us not being honest with them, but I don't know if that's necessarily the answer that's what happened. I don't think the Lions were like in January they knew, hey, we're gonna want Taylor back. We're gonna have we're gonna have to have pay cut. I don't think that whole conversation had happened at the exit interview. I think it's, they got through, they looked at everything, they looked at their budget, they planned all this stuff out, and they're saying, you know what? We're just not going to be able to afford to pay him $21 million if he's not going to be able to practice, if he's not going to be, he's going to have all these limitations, and so they thought, when he comes in after the combine, right before free agency, we'll talk with Taylor. Because they also probably wanted to respect his privacy they don't want to hound him about retirement if they thought he was
Right.
going to retire too. You know, and be like calling him every day, hey, you going to retire? It's although another way of like they might have secretly wanted him to retire so they didn't have to have the awkward conversation.
Yeah, you want her to break up with you so that you don't have to do it with her. Based on what Dan Campbell had said, though, he kind of said that before. He was open about it. He's like, if Decker is good to go, then we still need to be looking at a tackle because he's not always available. He's going through some stuff. And, I feel like that was being truthful. I feel like he was just speaking like that was 100% what the situation was at that point. That they weren't 100% sure, but they knew that we need to be ready for everything. and we need to have a contingency plan in place.
Yep.
And then Decker sprung that on by making that post. And I'm sure to a certain extent you're fired up, like we all were, like, okay, cool, we're going to get Decker back. And then, it's like, not so fast. Not for as much as we're going to have to pay him. We're just going to have to eat some of this money, and he's going to move on. And for what it's worth, Taylor Decker is still unsigned, and I've not heard anything about him meeting with any teams or anything. Have you?
No, I haven't heard. I saw like a Browns media post, like, should we look at Taylor Decker? And then people were like, no, we shouldn't look at him. At least that was the social media, uh, post that I saw. So I don't know. I don't think the market's there like he thought. And also, like, who was a left tackle for Green Bay? He was like the highest, like, that
Rasheed
they
Walker?
lost. Yeah. So like everyone was, before he signed, everyone's like, he's a $20 million tackle. I think the tackle market was way depressed than it usually is. And you know what? And at this point, when I looked at it, the Lions, have $9 million dead money for Taylor Decker, right? That's what we're eating on the cap right now. He was gonna be his cap hit was gonna be like 21 million. So like at this point, if we wanted to bring Taylor Decker back, I mean, at most we're going to offer him is like 5 or 6 million, right? Because then you're putting him at 14 million cost to us, and that's probably what we want him to cut. We probably want him to cut at least, I would say, probably at least 5 or 6 million. We probably want him to take that pay cut, and he wasn't willing to take it. And maybe that's a pride thing. Maybe it's like, what, if I'm injured, this is not worth it for me to 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 fight through this for that amount of money. I'd rather just retire.
Well,
He still hasn't
right. But
retired.
that's the answer. I'd rather just retire, not I'm moving on and I have the
Yeah.
intention of playing next year.
Mhm.
And
But he
maybe it's
also coulda
something where
s
he's just like, you know what, I'm in a rehab stage right now. I'm not taking any meetings or anything like that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's waiting till after the draft before he makes that move.
Mhm.
There's no chance that he makes as much money elsewhere as what he was going to make for us.
Yeah. For as much as he had to go through last year, like not practicing, I mean, that had to be a struggle. Is it Would it be worth it for him to go to another team, a whole new situation? I mean, the only thing I could see a situation is if you have, a top Super Bowl contender and then they get an injury on the line and they need someone to step right in, because like what else is Taylor Decker playing for other than the title, right? I mean, what else is he playing for at this point?
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
One thing I did find very interesting, and this is probably the most interesting for me personally, that Brad Holmes said in the draft was that he said you just have favorites. And when he was talking about in the draft, he's talking about individual players. You just have favorites. And when he said that, I didn't like that. That's one thing I did not like. And the reason why I don't like that is because I do think that he falls in love with players. I think Tesla, he falls in love with players, and he
He
will
mentioned
overspend.
Tesla.
Yeah,
Unprovoked,
he
he
did.
mentioned Tesla.
Yes. And so I think Manu was a guy he fell in. I think Broderick Martin is a player that he fell in love with. I think Sione Vaki is another player that he fell in love with and overspent because he fell in love with those players and wasn't willing to give them up. And I think until he's willing to do that and to lose his guy, that's going to be his Achilles heel in the draft. At least that's my feeling.
I mean, that's fair when you look at all the middle round picks that we've lost to move up for some of these guys. And, you know, the mid round picks that we're trading up for, we're not hitting on really, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Manu and
Those
Tesla are
guys,
the two big ones. And Tesla obviously had, very, very
I
limited
think
sample
Broderick
size.
Martin too. I think Broderick
Yes,
Martin is a
right,
huge
right.
one.
I forgot about Project Martin. Burn that out of my mind, But right, it's just not been turning out the way that he thought it was, and that has not deterred him from changing that strategy at all. And you're right,
Yeah.
he said that you just have to have favorites, or that you just have favorites, leads you to believe that that's not going to change. And he said, we're not going to change up the way we approach the draft. He also said, that they're not chasing need, right? Which is kind of a weird, like, yeah, we have a giant hole at edge, but, we're not going to take an edge just to take an edge. We want to really like the guy. I get that you have to like the player and you're not going to draft anybody just because they play the position that you need. So I get from that perspective, but then to also be like, well, you know what? We need these two spots, but man, I really love this, again, I really love this quarterback. I really love this other wide receiver as somebody. So this is who we're going to take a chance on here. I don't like that. I don't like the thinking of that when it comes to the top 3 rounds. I think the players that you love and the sleepers that you find have to be reserved for the later round picks.
Yeah.
If you move up in the 6th round or you trade your 6th round so you can move up a little bit higher in the 5th or the 4th, that's something that you can live with. Those top 3 are so valuable. And when you've missed as much as you have, like you're on thin ice with the Lions fans.
Yeah, I think you have to weigh all that stuff, like what you're giving up. Like, was Tesla, like, I like Tesla and I think he's going to be good. And I think that's an okay pick. I don't personally, though, giving up 3 third round picks for him was probably an overreach for a guy, especially that you might have been able to get, like, at your original pick based on where he was rated and all that. And the
Absolutely.
same thing with Broderick Martin. You gave up like 3 5th round picks to move up to get this guy that you probably could have got with one of those 5th round picks. They weren't even ready for his draft party because Broderick Martin didn't think he was going to go to day 3. And
Yeah.
so to tell him that, hey, you got this. Same thing with Vaki, we're like, okay, if we didn't get Vaki, would that be the end of the world? Like, especially for a project player, you're moving him over to running back when like, I like Vaki and I think he's a great special teams player, but I think that like he said what he shouldn't have said out loud. It's like exactly what I thought, and I read the situation. It's like there are certain guys that Brad Holmes just falls in love with and has blinders and said, I'm gonna get that guy, and I don't care if I have to trade up into the 3rd round when that guy might fall to the 4th round. And until he is willing to, like, lose that guy and trust the board, then that's going to be his Achilles heel, and that's where the drafts have suffered. He was patient and got, Amon-Ra in the 4th round, right? Like, he could have, like, fell in love with that guy and took him earlier, but we end up getting Aleem in that draft, and then you follow that up with Amon-Ra. Solid picks, right? And then, you know, and I know the roster was at a different point at that, but we're almost at that point right now where we need to draft cheap starters to fill in because we're going to have all these all pros and Pro Bowl players that, we're going to be very top heavy very soon.
I mean, what you had said before and what, people have tried to say, or, how we feel is that Brad Holmes usually has a pretty good idea about like where these players are going to go or different things like that. But
Mhm.
he's been so far, like Manu was projected like maybe round 7, but probably an undrafted free agent, right?
Yeah.
Broderick Martin was maybe round 6, probably round 7. Tesla was
Yeah.
like maybe he could sneak into round 4, but most likely round 5, maybe round 6. These are all like late day 3 picks that we're moving up for and making these moves to round 3.
Yeah.
So does he really have that good of a beat on them, or does he have the blinders on and he falls in love with these guys and he, after the first 2 rounds he's like, you know what, I'm going to take the guy that I love now.
Yeah. Yeah. I worry about that. And we have a lot of late round picks now because we got now we have 2 4th rounders. I know we got a fit. I know, do we have 2 6 or 2 7? I mean, we've got 9 total picks, right? So we have a lot. We're going to be moving up, and I just hope it's moving up appropriately and getting a guy instead of moving up. And we're getting a good player, but it's also we need to get good value. And so I'm hoping that Brad Holmes has some patience that he has not exhibited the last couple drafts. The last thing that I thought that Brad Holmes made a really good point, and I think that a lot of us need to realize this is like you really don't know. He said it. This is a direct quote. You really don't know the value of a player until the games kick off. We're looking at all these 1 year contracts, vet minimum contracts, and thinking, well, we've replaced a Meek with, a guy getting a vet minimum. How we've downgraded, right? We're not doing as well. The guys that we signed, like Amik signed for cheaper than what he left here, right? Which means he overplayed his contract, right? AQM overplayed his contract last year. Anzalone is a good player, still a good player, and he's gonna sign and get his money. Like, just because the guy signed for cheaper doesn't mean that they're not gonna go in. I think McCreary is a guy that has a really good chance of commanding a lot more money next year if he plays up to what I think he could play up to.
I mean, that's what we're offering them here, right? That's why, like Pacheco and stuff, you get these small contracts, but you get a fair shake. Like, you're not going to come in here and because what we're paying you, not going to get those reps. Like, you're going to get the chance to earn it. And if you earn it, that spot's there and you're going to get playing time with it.
Yep. Yeah. So I still think this is a destination for a lot of these guys. They know they're going to get a fair shake. Doesn't matter if the Lions go out and draft someone in the second round. If you outplay them, you're going to play because that's just the way that this team's built. And I think the Dan Campbell factor has got people excited. I mean, Pacheco, it sounds like from what Brad Holmes said, higher offers from other teams decide to come to the Lions, which is interesting because you already got Jahmyr Gibbs, but it could be the perfect 1-2 punch.
Right?
It really could if Pacheco comes back to what he was pre-injury. That might be a big if, but I still like the way he runs, and you know, can he give you 7 to 10 solid rushes a game? Yeah, I think he can, and I like where the position he'll be in. So hopefully,
Can he throw the ball as well as David Montgomery?
I don't think so. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we'll have to change the playbook. We got a new offensive coordinator. All right, real quick, Jacob, before we go off, JSN signed the biggest contract in wide receiver his in history of the NFL. Did that shock you that he got that much? What's your thoughts on JSN becoming the highest paid wide receiver? What's the contract? What's the average? Like 42
42, I
million?
think. I think it was
Yeah, 42
42.
million a year.
Wild. But you know
Yeah.
what? He had a really good year, riding an all-time high for the Seahawks and everything. The season that he just put out, him and his agent, great work there. Trying to get the maximum amount that you possibly can. I still feel like this is one that maybe in a couple of years people think that they overspent.
Yeah.
But that's the way these contracts work.
Yeah.
Sign him for 42, the next guy gets 43, then 44. The salary cap goes up. You just keep going up higher. A few years down the road, then he's, top 5. He's not number 1 anymore. It's just the way these things work.
Well,
That's a lot of money though. And then, like
it
I said,
is.
he had a great year. Where does that put Puka though?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Puka had to love seeing that contract, but God, that's so much money though. 42 million. I mean, I know not it wasn't too long ago that we were like, man, this quarterback's getting a 40 million. That's a lot of money. And now wide receivers are getting it, defensive ends are getting it. And it just in relation to the Lions, it makes the Amon-Ra contract look amazing. He's like number 9. So like when you talk about value, Amon-Ra's given us tons of value fair to contract and production.
Yeah, you talk about production, you talk about all pros and everything that he brings. I mean, the people that are above him, AJ Brown, rather have Amon Ra. Terry McLaurin, rather have Amon Ra. Garrett Wilson, rather have Amon Ra. DK Metcalf above him, we'd rather have Amon Ra. You get to, JSN, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb. Those are the top 4 right now. But Amon Ra deserves to be up there in terms of talent and production with all of those guys. And yet he's making like he's making 12, an average of 12 million less per year than JSN.
I know. It's wild. So I mean, I know people get mad that Brad Holmes signs his own guys early, and maybe it hasn't worked out in the Liam McNeil and the Derek Barnes case, but Penei Sewell, that contract looks amazing. Aiden Hutchinson's gonna look good just because, the way they were able to sign those guys. Amon-Ra looks amazing. JMO's contract, the way they work that looks I know that it's gonna be weird at the end of that because there's some money that piles up, but getting him for what you know, wide receivers are getting paid wild amount of money. And I didn't think we were gonna be able to afford both JMO and Amon-Ra, but they surprisingly did that contract, and if
If
JMO keeps
Alec
playing the way he's
Pierce,
playing.
if Alec Pierce is going to make just about as much as Amon Ra, like what are we doing?
Exactly. 56 catches last year, Alec Pierce, and I think it was 56. Could be wrong. It's
He's
somewhere
making
around there, maybe
more than
54.
JMO.
Exactly. Wild. So, all right, Jacob, we're about an hour and a half in. It's great talking football with you. We will have draft stuff next week. Probably next Wednesday we'll go live. Eric is looking pretty close. We're nailing down everything, but it's going to be like probably the week, not the week of the draft, but the Wednesday before the draft is the way that we're planning for Eric. So plan that right now. We're excited to talk to him. We're going to learn a lot. And if you're someone that's not familiar with Eric Schlitt, you got to listen to that podcast because you will learn what the Lions are thinking. Eric has a very good insight with his grid index about the players that Lions covet. So it's way better than any national broadcast you're going to get, and it's going to be all solid draft stuff. We'll be live, so you could come on and we will. I don't know how many people will be in our live stream, how many questions we're going to get fired, but we will ask some of those questions to Eric, and we'll get that on there. I'm really looking forward to that. So for Jacob over there, I'm Jason. Let's go Lions.